As a dad of two awesome little kids, the whole idea of the American dream really hits home to me. It's supposed to mean that no matter where you come from, hard work and perseverance will let you build a life that you can be proud of. But as the 2024 presidential election draws closer, I'm increasingly worried that this dream is slipping through our fingers. It's not happening with a sledgehammer. No, instead, it's slowly being ground to dust one piece at a time. While we get distracted with playing identity politics or invent the newest set of gripes that don't really matter, what makes America truly great is vanishing right in front of our eyes. We need to wake up. We have to protect the American dream for our children and future generations, and we'll never accomplish that goal with a mere whisper. We must expect more from our presidential candidates and be willing to hold them accountable if they fail us in the White House. First, let's get the big one out of the way. Economic inequality. Let's face it, the gap between the rich and the rest of us seems to be growing every single day, and this growing inequality means that the middle-class families like mine are finding it harder to stay afloat, let alone thrive. The elites would have us believe that it's possible to attain great wealth without having a negative impact upon those within lower economic classes. But let's face it, time is money. And while we waste away working for vast majorities of our lives, less of that money is making its way into our bank accounts. I'm not asking for much. If I work hard, then a comfortable life should be naturally following that. However, with the current state of change, I'm concerned that my children and grandchildren will be forced to simply fight for survival for their whole lives. I'm looking for the 2024 candidates to lay out some real plans to fix this. They need to show us how they will get wages moving up instead of stalling, and what they'll do to make sure that the super rich are paying their fair share. I want to know that they're looking out for families trying to get by, not just the folks at the top who will always have the money and will always have the influence to step on the little guy. And while we're on the topic of money, let's not forget how the few dollars that we manage to scrape by are simply not buying much these days. Whether it's getting health care, sending our kids to college, or simply putting some food on the table, it feels like everything costs a fortune these days. Homeownership in particular has me concerned. It's a defining moment in the American dream and the biggest determinant in long-term stability of a family. Homeownership allows people to invest in their communities. Areas become safer, more vibrant, and more conducive to raising a productive family when people can buy a house. How do we ever get to the point where a roof over a family's head is considered a luxury? That's insanity to me. The truth is that previous generations, mine included at this point, have taken homeownership for granted. When our young people cannot afford to buy a home until their mid-30s or later, then we must admit that the American dream is on life support. We can no longer accept this delayed measure of success and hope to have a society that thrives, that accomplishes things, that makes families feel whole and complete, and that also allows us to retire eventually, right? I mean, we need a moment to ourselves. Is that ever going to happen? And the truth is, without a home, most people can't afford to retire. That's a problem. I want to hear a candidate who doesn't just talk about these problems, but offers a solution that makes sense, like how to make the housing more affordable, healthcare more accessible, and education something that doesn't saddle a family with debt for decades. We need to stop collecting debt. And we're told that, these are our decisions. But the cards are stacked against us. We need somebody who will stand up for us. I'm not saying take away all my debt. I'm just saying help me make a world where debt isn't the first thing that we have to do. Unfortunately, these foundation-level topics aren't just making the front pages these days. They're disappearing. They're gone. We've become too distracted with the chaos of the world to notice entire generations are being left behind back home. We need that change. In order to accomplish any progress on these topics, then we have to get past the political gridlock that exists right now. The constant fighting in Washington is more than just annoying, it's harmful. It stops anything useful from getting done. I'm not saying that we need to write blank checks to fix things. No, definitely not. Actually, I'm saying quite the opposite. I want real communication on fundamental issues that impact every American. As a parent, I find it incredibly frustrating to see politicians squabbling while issues that affect our children's future begin to pile up. Let's start knocking things off the list one at a time. How is that difficult? Does everyone need water? Obviously, yes. So let's make sure our water's clean. That's pretty obvious. Don't sit in the halls of Washington and arguing over that fact. Don't take money and tack it on for special interests to a bill that is simply about clean water for our families. If Flint, Michigan needs to eliminate the poison flowing from their sinks, then what does that have to do with the boogeyman special interests from across the world? I got a surprise for you. It doesn't. But our politicians insist on making bloated spending bills filled with utter nonsense, delay tactics, and we're left here struggling. They do this so that we're convinced that we need their efforts in Washington, D.C., but what really have they accomplished? Probably nothing. For my vote in 2024, I'm looking for someone who can cut through the noise and actually get things done. Someone who's more interested in solving problems than scoring political points. No more games, no more showmanship, and more simple, common sense solutions. We need that mentality from the person at the top, and we need a president who calls a mess out for what it is. Lastly, let's talk about keeping up with a world that's changing faster than ever. I believe that we are on the edge of the biggest changes in human history. Technology and artificial intelligence that's changing the job market rapidly, and the pace will only continue to increase at this rate. I worry about whether or not my kids will have the skills they need for jobs that might not even exist yet, or if those jobs will even exist in the first place. At the same time, tech is creating opportunities, and I want them to be ready to grab them. We need a leader who's forward-looking and willing to be proactive on these subjects. The agendas and interests in Washington, D.C. will have an immense impact on the pace and direction of technology over the next few decades, and I'm not saying we need to stifle progress, but I need to know that we have a president who's not simply pandering to votes right now, but also is genuinely preparing our country for opportunities that our children might have in the future. I'm listening for candidates who talk about how they'll support education and training and prepare our children for their future. I also want to know how they'll help workers who are displaced by these new technologies. Taking care of the people now, predicting what the people will need in the future, and finding ways to create opportunities for everyone. I'm not saying the government has to have their hands in everything on this subject, but I am saying that we, the people, need to be empowered and encouraged and shown that we need to have an impact on our children's future. Hopefully, AI, hopefully it doesn't ruin everything for us, and hopefully we can find a way to work together with it. I want a president who's willing to at least broach that subject right now. When I think about the 2024 election, it's not just policies or politics that I care about. It's my kids' future. I'm looking for a leader who understands that the American dream should be within everyone's reach and who has a concrete plan to make sure that that becomes a reality. It's about making sure that this dream doesn't just become fairy tales that we tell our kids someday, but a real promise that we can believe in and achieve. The decisions we make today will reverberate for generations to come. So whether our next president is RFK Jr., Trump, or Biden, you better believe that I'm going to be asking a lot from them. And they better be up for the job.